to earn our pay. Fight harder.
One of Titanfall 2's biggest improvements from Titanfall 1 was the sheer amount of new cosmetic progression options brought into the game. Titanfall 2 offers players so many skins for their pilot, weapons, and titans that it almost becomes annoying to sort through them all. Now this section will only cover cosmetic progression, as I honestly have no issues with the way that you unlock new weapons, abilities, and titans in Titanfall 2. If it isn't broken, don't fix it, and I can't really think of any way that the current system is broken. But getting back to the cosmetics, I think that while Titanfall 2 added some great options, there's still much to be desired and plenty of room for improvement. While I do appreciate many of the skins, I feel that only having skins is rather uninspired, especially since many modern games have started to incorporate animations and different models into their cosmetic progression. I also think that there are too many skins, which may seem like an odd thing to complain about, but I feel that this much variety really obscures the actual challenge of unlocking the skin. I think of a skin as a way of showing off your in-game accomplishments. Seeing a rare skin would not only look cool, but it tells the story of what the player went through to get it. And with so many skin options to choose from, I think it makes it too difficult to discern what skin a player is using or remember its unlock requirements. But the amount of skins in Titanfall 2 allowed players to get some pretty unique and interesting colors and patterns on their gear, which I think many people really appreciate. So for Titanfall 3, I would love if there was skin customization. This would break skins down into 3 different components: pattern, primary color, and secondary color. This would give players some decent options to customize their gear without bloating the skin selections with repeats of the same pattern with different colors. This would also give players plenty of unlocks to chase after for a long time, encouraging them to return to the game day after day. Now some people may advocate for complete custom skin editing like in Call of Duty, but like I said before, which pattern and colors you use tells the story of how you unlocked it, which I personally think is a lot more valuable to the experience. For Titans in particular, I would also love to see the nose arts and war paints return, as some of these were really awesome. Banners and patches should also return, but I think they could be a bit more unique. For patches, I would love to see some more colors, as most of the patches are just a white picture, and for banners, I would love to see some counters that keep track of different stats, like MVP, wins, or kills with a certain gun. But these options are just the tip of the cosmetics iceberg, and I have a few more ideas that I think players would get really excited about. One of my favorite progression systems in any game was Halo Reach. Now, if you guys have been watching this series from the beginning, you're probably getting tired of me bringing up Halo by this point. But the old Halo games are just chock full of some really great ideas that other games never really caught on to, and Reach's progression is certainly one of them. For those who have never played Reach, as you play the multiplayer you would earn credits which can be spent in the armory to change your Spartan's appearance. The armory contained an absurd amount of cosmetic options. There were the really noticeable things like your helmet, chest plate, shoulders, and visor color, but also some really fine details like wrist, utility, knee guards, and helmet attachments. Each of these items were unlocked as you rose higher in the ranks, but still needed to be purchased with credits. Some of these armor pieces were extremely expensive, requiring the players to save up for weeks, if not months worth of playtime. This progression system brought some great personalization to the game, and each player's Spartan felt really unique. I think something similar to this would be an incredible addition to Titanfall, and would actually give you something to spend your credits on. Now this wouldn't need to be as insane as Halo Reach's armory, as I think this system can be applied to pilots, titans, and even weapons. Now in Titanfall 2, the pilot's appearance is based on the tactical ability they currently have equipped, so that players know what they're going up against. Having customizable armor may interfere with this, so I think that the armor's profile should remain fairly consistent with what tactical ability the player currently has equipped, kinda like how Prime Titans look different, but are still identifiable. This would mean that each individual tactical ability would have their own sets of armor. So players wouldn't just unlock a generic helmet, they would unlock a grapple helmet or a pulse blade helmet. For pilots, players could equip a helmet, chest piece, armor, and a unique aesthetic accent. I think these accents should be somewhat themed around the tactical ability. For example, the default cloak pilot in Titanfall 2 wears what I call the Wookiee suit, but what if you could swap out the fur for a ghillie mesh or a hooded cloak? Additionally, I would also love to see a few armor attachments which could be added to any pilot regardless of their ability. These would be fine details rather than sweeping changes. Halo Reach had some items like data pads on your wrists or a utility case on your legs. For Titans, players could equip a chassis, arms, legs, and a unique aesthetic accent as well. Once again, the accent should be fairly unique to a particular Titan's abilities, like being able to customize Ronin's sword. And for weapons, players could equip a stock, body, grip, and once again, a unique aesthetic accent. These would be completely different than weapon mods and would have no impact on gameplay. And like pilot and Titan armor, the accent should revolve around the weapon theme. For example, the Volt could have some sort of intricate wiring as it's an electricity-based weapon. For For weapons in particular, I can see these types of cosmetic modifications being somewhat tricky or time-consuming, and the idea of a prime weapon system might be a bit easier, like a scratched up and dirty battle-hardened R101 or a liquid-cooled L-Star that fires blue projectiles. Now, one thing I don't really want to see is the ridiculous and immersion-breaking cosmetics that I often see in games. Call of Duty is particularly bad for this, with bright neon suits that look completely ridiculous and out of place. If these were included, I would highly recommend giving players an option to turn off other players' customization. But personally, I've always preferred when the customization options fit within the game universe. In fact, another interesting idea would be if each cosmetic item had a short lore description which explains how and why it exists. Something like, this helmet was initially designed for scouting new planets, but was quickly adapted for combat applications when war broke out on the frontier. Maybe I'm the only one who appreciates these little things, but I think it would add a lot to the Titanfall universe for very little effort. These are pretty much all the ideas that I have, but customization options are just half of the cosmetic reward system. The other part is how to unlock them, so let's move on to the next topic of this video. Cosmetic unlock requirements are one area of progression that I think seems a lot less complicated than it actually is. There are a lot of different factors and opinions to consider, as progression is something that players all have a different perspective on. More casual players might consider a lengthy progression system to be too grindy. Hardcore players might feel that a fast progression system is too shallow. Players with very little free time may feel that certain rewards are completely out of reach if they don't have options to purchase them with real money. There really isn't a perfect progression system, and like the casual-hardcore balance, I think this is an aspect of the game that requires some compromise. Different people play games for different reasons. Some people play just for the experience of playing it. Others might play games for a sense of achievement or accomplishment. And some enjoy playing games because they can socialize and interact with other players. Each of these types of players will want something different from a game's progression system, and I think it's important that all of these perspectives are considered. For this reason, I think that Titanfall 3 should have a few different progression pathways which cater to different players and serve different purposes. The first path is the faction route. This form of progression would be a linear unlock path with unlocks exclusive to each faction. From the faction's menu, players could preview all of the unlocks that are available at each milestone to see which faction offers them the items they want the most. Imagine if when you reach Generation 100 with the 6-4 faction, you would unlock Gates' helmet for your grapple pilot. That would get me logging on every day, since I personally think that it's the coolest looking helmet in the game. Each faction would have its own set of leveled milestones, and when players reach said milestone, they would unlock the reward. While it would be cool if there was an unlock for every generation, that would require Respawn to make 100 rewards per faction, which I'm not sure would be entirely realistic to expect. But even if there were only 20 milestones, I think that would be more than enough to entice players. Now, network progression is pretty slow, which could feel frustrating for some players. To help people rank up their faction a bit faster, players could buy faction bounties with credits from the faction menu. These would be unique challenges that the player could complete to receive some faction reputation. There would be maybe 5 bounties each week that the player could purchase. At the end of the week, the bounties would reset and a new selection of bounties could be purchased. Bounty objectives would also encourage players to try out different game modes or parts of the sandbox, ranging from goals like win 5 games of Last Titan Standing to getting 20 kills with the plasma railgun. Which bounties are available each week could be different for each faction, so if players didn't want to do the bounties for the 6-4 that week, they could switch to a different faction that had bounties they liked better. I think faction progression would cater very well to players who just enjoyed the experience of the gameplay. It's a more background type of progression that doesn't ask the player to do something particular unless they want to complete the bounties, which are completely optional. Bounties themselves would offer players rewards for trying something new, while placing more value on credits and encouraging people to log on each week. For rewards, players could receive faction-themed items like a 6-4 Titan nose art, or Viper's helmet for Apex Predators, or a Marauder Course-themed banner. The second progression path would be the network route. I've already talked about this in a previous video, so I'll just do a quick overview for those who haven't seen it yet. By joining a network, players would gain access to network challenges. These would be specifically designed for cooperating with network members with challenges like get 800 kills with SMGs in a week, or complete Frontier Defense on Insane with a full team of network members without a single death. When the challenge is completed, a specific reward would be unlocked for all members who took part. Some challenges would need to scale in difficulty depending on how many members you have in your network. So if you have 8 members in your network, you would only need 800 kills with SMGs, but if you had 1,000 members in your network, you would need 10,000 kills. I think network progression would be a great reward system for social gamers who enjoy the player interaction side of online gaming, and would also allow content creators to have a greater sense of community with their audience. Completing challenges could reward players with unlocks like network banner customization options, a clan tag option on your titans and weapons, some exclusive weapon, pilot, and titan personalization options, and much more. If you want to know more about my opinions on networks and network progression, you can find out in my video discussing general design. The third progression pathway would be the challenge route. This is a pretty simple form of progression that most players would already understand from playing previous Titanfall games or just online multiplayer games in general. The basic idea is that there are challenges that players could complete in order to earn a specific reward. However, one major change to this system would be how players progress through pilot, titan, and weapon generations. In Titanfall 1, players needed to complete a set of challenges before they could regenerate. This is a feature that I really miss, and I was somewhat disappointed that it wasn't carried over to Titanfall 2. Now, some players didn't really like this too much and just preferred playing the game normally to regenerate, but I think that faction progression would be enough to cater to those types of players. So for Titanfall 3, I would love if regen requirements came back and was even brought over to weapons and titans. The way it would work is players would have a set of challenges that they would need to complete in order to regenerate. For pilot regeneration, this could range anywhere from weapon and titan challenges to tactical ability and game mode challenges. This wouldn't really be any different from Titanfall 1's system, which is fine by me since I personally think it was great the way it was. For weapon and titan regeneration in particular, things would be a bit different. Instead of needing the player to progress through a series of levels to regenerate, they would need to complete a series of challenges instead. The first series of challenges would be the same challenges required to unlock all of the weapon mods or titan customization options. These would be fairly simple, only requiring the player to get kills and titan damage, since I don't think there should be any skill-based barriers for unlocking game-influencing upgrades that are essential to the actual gameplay experience. After unlocking all the mods or customization options for a particular weapon or titan, it would automatically become Generation 1, and the player would unlock a cosmetic reward. Players could preview a weapon or titan's cosmetic options and unlock requirements from the loadout or titan customization menu like they can in Titanfall 2. However, unlike Titanfall 2, each new tab would correlate with a particular generation to make it easy for players to see their cosmetic progression. Each generation would have its own set of cosmetic options that players could unlock through completing the network requirements. When all the challenges for a particular generation have been completed, the weapon would automatically regenerate to the next level, and the player would receive a cosmetic reward. I think the reward for reaching a new generation should be more significant than the unlocks within each generation, to give players some nice milestones to work towards. I hope this system doesn't seem too convoluted and that I've done a decent job of explaining things. Now, some of you may be wondering why I want to lock cosmetic options behind different generations, rather than just having a bunch of challenges with rewards. There are really a few different reasons. The first is that I feel this system would give players a better sense of understanding of what and why they're receiving different unlocks. In Titanfall 2, I just seem to unlock things after every game without knowing how I did it. With my regeneration system, I think players would look through all the cosmetic options to see which ones they want. Then, when they see a cool cosmetic they want to unlock in one of the higher generations, they will be much more aware of each individual challenge and its reward, as completing them is essential for reaching the generation in which they can obtain the cosmetic item that they really want. Another reason why I think this system would work well is because it assigns more value to each unlock. One of the problems with customization options in games is that the value of cosmetic items is completely determined by whether or not the player likes that particular item. This means that players are constantly unlocking items that are completely worthless to them since it isn't what they like. Titanfall 2 is particularly bad for this, with me still unlocking new skins that I have no intention of ever using. The notable exception to this are the Stoic camos, which is kind of where I got the idea for generational rewards from. It was the one cosmetic item that actually demanded a lot from me as a player, and each new Stoic camo that I unlocked was a milestone that I looked forward to on my path to Stoic Dark. Similarly, with regeneration-based unlocks, each new cosmetic item that a player unlocks would be an exciting milestone in their path to unlocking what they actually want. Even if players don't like that particular cosmetic item, it still has value to them since it gets them closer to their goal. And the last reason I think this system would work well is that it would lengthen the progression system in a meaningful and rewarding way. Instead of just creating a long grind for players to slowly chip away at over time, regeneration-based unlocks would create a long list of unique challenges for players to complete. I personally think this would be a lot more fun than just getting kills, and could really vary up the gameplay. The challenges would start out rather straightforward and easy at first, but as the player increases their weapon or titan generation, the challenges would get a bit more interesting and demanding. So at Generation 1, a challenge might be to get 100 kills with the Kraber, but at Generation 10, a challenge might be to get 50 Goosers with the Kraber. Now with this challenge and regeneration system, some players might find that certain challenges are too difficult or unenjoyable for them. For this reason, I think Titanfall 1's Forged Certificate system should return so that players could bypass certain challenges they really don't want to do. Forged certificates would come at a pretty high price and would get even more expensive depending on which generation your pilot, titan, or weapon is at. This would be worth it for players who are really struggling with a certain challenge, but it would cost credits that could be better spent elsewhere. And on the topic of credits, every cosmetic unlock from any unlock path would come at a certain credit cost. This is in addition to the unlock requirements, so once the unlock requirements have been met, players could then spend their credits to gain access to the item. Credits are earned by completing games of multiplayer and frontier defense, with extra credits for winning the match, extracting, being in the top 3 players, and not quitting out of 10 matches in a row. Additionally, players can complete weekly and monthly challenges to earn some bonus credits. There are 2 reasons why I think that credits are necessary. The first is so that players have an extra incentive to play the game more, so they can acquire the credits necessary to get what they want. And the second is so that players feel adequately rewarded for doing well in a game, as well as giving players a reason to stay in a losing match through bonus credit rewards. Overall, I think that credits are a great way to give players something valuable after every match, and give players a sense of investment. The last way to unlock a cosmetic item is through the purchase of microtransactions. While microtransactions aren't exactly popular, I think it's naive to assume that they won't be included in Titanfall 3. I look at microtransactions as a sort of compromise, a deal between players and developers. While I think most players would rather have all the cosmetic items be able to be acquired in-game, if players get something of equal or greater value in return, then I think microtransactions can be a net positive on the experience. With the type of microtransactions that were in Titanfall 2, I think that the free DLC was a fair compromise. In fact, I actually bought quite a few of Titanfall 2's microtransactions, since I thought they were actually really good value for what I got. I spent about $160 in total through buying the game for myself, buying the game for my brother-in-law, and purchasing microtransactions. That may seem like a lot of money to spend on a single game, but I don't regret it at all since I got way more than my money's worth out of Titanfall 2 with all of its free updates and content. I've always felt that Titanfall 2 did microtransactions right. They offered good content for a reasonable price without any alternate currency or loot boxes. For Titanfall 3, I want to see this mentality carried forward through what I call Prime Packs. These are basically just a bunch of items bundled together for a relatively small price. There would be no RNG involved or alternate currency, just a straight price for the items. An example would be a Scorch Prime Pack, which would include a new chassis, leg armor, armor, execution, banner, and skin pattern. Or an R201 Prime Pack, which could include a new stock, body, grip, banner, reticle, and pattern color. And the best thing is that Prime Packs include customization pieces rather than customization replacements, meaning that they can be mixed and matched with skill-based unlocks. This would avoid the problem where players don't want to pursue skill-based unlocks since they paid money for other cosmetics, or players don't want to buy new cosmetics since they spent time acquiring a skill-based unlock. Rather, these two systems would work in tandem with each other. Players might unlock a new skin pattern that they really like, then see that there are a few items in a Prime Pack that would really complement that pattern really well. But one very important thing to note is that I think there are some items that should be unlock exclusive and can't be purchased with real money. I think it's important to be able to show off some things that can only be earned by players, since these are the items that really stand out. Titan nose arts and pilot aesthetic accents are 2 examples of things that shouldn't be purchasable with money. These are really big and noticeable things that make a statement about what the player went through to unlock it. While Titanfall 2 had some of the best microtransactions I've ever seen in a game, I think the idea of Prime Packs would be going another step further in the right direction. It's a system that encourages players to purchase some new cosmetics without exploiting or manipulating them. Ultimately, I don't think that people would refuse to pay some extra money for something that seems worth the price, especially in a game that they love. If anything, we want to support the franchise even more, and while many people might agree that paid-for cosmetics would be better as in-game rewards, I also think that most people would agree that free DLC is easily worth that price.
Hostile pilot contained and destroyed.
Keep fighting! Hostile pilot, your Titan's ready. Call it in any time.
For the last topic of this video, I want to discuss my thoughts on how I think post-launch content drops should be handled. One of the most important things to consider about post-launch support is that there needs to be something for developers and publishers to gain for supporting the game. I can't really say that I blame Respawn for not making any more DLC, since at this point, Titanfall 2's community is so small that there's little to actually gain from making it. DLC is a very loaded topic which has been at the center of controversy for many years now, and I don't envy the developers who need to try and juggle the needs of their fanbase with the needs of their publisher. From a player perspective, I think that Titanfall 2's post-launch support was actually fairly well done. Not perfect by any stretch, but it certainly kept me interested in the game and made me look forward to new updates. But from a financial perspective, I'm not sure how much money Titanfall 2's microtransactions actually made. I think I remember Respawn explaining in a Reddit AMA that Titanfall 2's microtransactions didn't make as much money as they were hoping it would, but I think a lot of that can be attributed to the low launch day sales, leading to a smaller fan base, and thus less people to purchase microtransactions. So for Titanfall 3, I honestly think that the best innovation for post-launch support is simply to increase the amount of launch day sales. A better marketing campaign and less crowded release date would be an excellent place to start. But with all of that out of the way, what about the actual content drops themselves? In my opinion, I think there needs to be both large and small DLCs. Small DLCs would include things like a remastered map, new prime packs to buy, and most importantly, new network challenges, generation increases, and cosmetic rewards. These would not only add a small bit of new content to the game, but it would also extend the progression a bit as well. If a map editor is included in Titanfall 3, some new pieces and/or a new canvas would also be a great addition. As a small side note, on the topic of remastered maps, I think that Respawn should take some creative liberties with the map layouts and design to ensure that these play spaces are properly adjusted to Titanfall 3's sandbox. This is one issue that I had with Titanfall 2's DLCs, with maps like Colony and Relic being some of my least favorite maps in the game. Anyways, ideally small content drops would release every month, giving players some more things to progress towards on a new map while they wait for the next month's DLC. An example of a small content drop might be a Dry Dock remaster, prime packs for Scorch, Northstar, and all the SMGs, 5 more faction generations and network challenges with rewards, and maybe 20 more pieces for the map editor. These small DLCs would be more like appetizers, while the large DLCs would be the main course. Large content drops would be a much more significant addition to the game. They could include things like a couple of completely original maps, a new pilot weapon, a new Titan, new frontier defense missions, new game modes, a new faction, a large amount of new prime packs to buy, new map editor canvases and pieces, significant generation increases, new network challenges, and new cosmetic rewards. And when I say new pilot weapon, I mean something that adds some new mechanics to the weapons sandbox. The Wingman Elite is a great example of this, as that weapon performs drastically different from many of the other weapons in the game. Even the R101 with its scope is enough of a difference for me to enjoy its inclusion, and even prefer it over the R201. But I've heard many weapon ideas from the community that sound really cool, but don't actually add anything unique to the experience. A great example of this is a pump-action shotgun. While I certainly understand the appeal, from a mechanical gameplay perspective, what does it really add to the game that the Mastiff doesn't already do as a slow-firing, high-damage shotgun with decent range? In fact, I think the inclusion of a pump-action shotgun would make the Mastiff obsolete, which would be a real shame since I think it's one of Titanfall 2's best designed weapons. So when thinking of new weapons to add to the game, I always ask myself what that particular weapon could bring to the table that the other weapons don't. For example, I think bringing the Arc Tool into the Anti-Titan weapon slot could be a pretty cool DLC weapon. It would be a relatively close-range AT weapon that automatically locks onto enemy Titans, requiring the player to risk staying close to them while incentivizing fast and smart movement. Anyways, I got a bit sidetracked with this topic, so let's get back to discussing DLC. I think 3 or 4 large content drops per year, releasing every 3 or 4 months, would be more than adequate to keep players interested and bring others back. An example of a large DLC would be a completely new map, like Glitch was in Titanfall 2, a new frontier defense mission, a new pilot weapon, a new game mode, prime packs for all the Titans and assault rifles, a new map editor canvas and pieces, another generation of Titan unlocks, 10 more network challenges with rewards, and a balance patch. I also think that the last large content drop of the year should be something pretty big, like the Ground War game mode I proposed, or something along those lines. Something that can be heavily advertised to bring players back to the game, and even bring new players into the fold. This is kind of like the Frontier Defense update in Titanfall 2, but for reasons which I'll discuss in my next video, I don't think introducing Frontier Defense in a DLC for Titanfall 3 would be the best idea. This last large DLC could either be an epic final send-off, or if microtransactions are still going strong, a launchpad for another year of DLCs. Now, I'm not sure if this small and large DLC idea is feasible from a development standpoint, since it is a lot of content that needs to be made. My guess is that the scope and scale of post-launch content would be determined by the launch day and microtransaction sales. Personally, I would be fine if a potential Titanfall 4 was delayed to deliver a solid year of excellent DLC for Titanfall 3. But obviously, That decision would be determined by many different factors behind the curtain. I'm probably way too optimistic when it comes to what is actually possible to accomplish, and ultimately this series is about what I think would be the best Titanfall 3, not necessarily the most realistic. And this brings me to the end of this video. I know that topics like progression, DLC, and microtransactions can be pretty controversial, and that some of you may not agree with some of my opinions. There are a lot of different perspectives to consider, and there isn't a right or wrong answer for many of these topics. I hope that I explained my viewpoints clear enough that even if you don't agree with me, you can at least understand where I'm coming from. If you have any comments or concerns, please leave them down in the comment section below, along with some of your own ideas on the progression system and post-launch support. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope to see you in my next video discussing Frontier Defense.